One of 2023's indie darlings was this Romanian film entitled Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. I ain't seen it. It's got Uwe Boll in it. But the director, Radu Jude, said he's making a Dracula movie. Or rather, not really Dracula, but something close to it. It's called Dracula Park. That got me thinking about the fact that I don't think Romania has ever made a Dracula movie. Taken a certain way, Dracula could be read as an expression of Western xenophobia against Eastern Europe. But given the Romanian tourism industry they've built around Dracula, I don't know that that's why they haven't made a Dracula film. I suspect it's the non-commercial nature of Romanian cinema. Dracula went public domain in 1962. A few years before Ceausescu took over, and after Ceausescu died, there was the Romanian New Wave, which was mostly about life after communism, and it wasn't until the last few years you've started to see more crowd-pleasing horror and comedy-type movies coming out of that country. From 2012 to 2016, Romanian films only accounted for 3% of the Romanian box office, so Romanians aren't big fans of watching Romanians sitting around depressing beige-colored apartments either. The windows of time in which a Romanian Dracula film could have been made have been very narrow. Anyway, I went looking for a Romanian Dracula film, and the closest I could find was 1979's Vlad Tepus, a historical film celebrating the Impaler as a national hero. The film was commissioned by General Secretary Nicolae Ceausescu, the ruler they executed on live television on Christmas Day in 1989, and was intended as a piece of propaganda based on Ceausescu's July Theses speech, where, after a fleeting period of relative freedom in the 1960s, the new boss basically said it's going to be no fun allowed from here on out, and we're really doubling down on the communism. The film largely functions as a justification of authoritarianism. The best part is this guy, Stefan Silanu as Vlad. He's charismatic and handsome in that stern Klingon sort of way. The worst thing about the movie is I was really confused for a lot of it because every single character in the film has this He-Man haircut and a Mario mustache, and I lost track of who was who to such an extent that there were entire scenes I didn't understand. There's a lot of badass lines in the movie, like when the preacher man tells Vlad not to forge his swords in hellfire, and Vlad says it's all he's got handy.
Crezi în foc, non vorbe sfinția ta, nu algheni. N-am altul la îndemână.
It's true that a lot of what has been said of Vlad Tepes was propaganda spread by his enemies, but also his last name was the Impaler because he impaled people. I don't think either movie fesses up to how cruel this guy was in real life, but this one comes a lot closer to it than Dracula Untold, which never finds the balls to really paint him as a tyrant. This film regards him as a tyrant and makes excuses for why that's a good thing. Getting to the bottom of exactly where the line is drawn between the real and mythological Vlad Tepes is a tricky thing. The movie suggests the impaling of criminals and political enemies was basically the extent of his cruelty, and it doesn't show him subjecting any women or children to the spike. I don't mean to project modern standards of morality onto the guy who had to keep the Turks at bay 500 years ago, but what Vlad did was textbook terrorism. Whether or not he actually burned, buried, and boiled people alive, that was the reputation he was actively courting. And I don't think I'm unfairly maligning him to suggest he was probably a bit nastier than this movie depicts. There are some very impressive visuals here and there. It's funny how a battle scene can be very basic, but still impressive when it's practical and live action, compared to the big epic battle scenes of Dracula Untold that wash over you like white noise. I wouldn't call this movie required viewing. I know they made all you film school dorks watch Leni Riefenstahl's gay Nazi pornos or whatever at NYU, so you get it. You know what it looks like when a dictator commissions a film that flatters his sensibilities. You know, reading about communist Romania, you get all these slanted takes from Westerners. Conservatives think that the Soviet bloc is evidence of why socialism is bad and you shouldn't start a union or get health care. Young leftists believe that no communist country has ever suffered except by American intervention. But the first-person Romanian accounts that I've read take issue with totalitarianism in general and with Ceausescu in particular. It's not an abstract ideological question for them. You know how people don't want to have babies when the economy is in bad shape and everyone's broke? And you know how that upsets the people in charge because it diminishes their labor resources? There was a major epidemic of crowded orphanages in Romania in the 1980s because Ceausescu responded to declining birth rates by outlawing abortion. America responded to declining birth rates by overturning Roe v. Wade a couple years ago. You really think the issue we're facing is ideological? You really think authoritarianism is a question of left or right wing?